The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Years ago, I shot 10 bags of heroin every day. Heroin is a beast, and that beast has infiltrated every town and city in America. In 2016, 64,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose of opioids. I hope that the stories we bring you on this show save lives in 2018. I'm Richie Farrell. I'm a heroin addict. Okay, I'd like to apologize for any of our viewers that were watching when we started about 15 minutes ago, right in the middle of probably my best introduction ever. Well, this is only our fourth show, but right in the middle of it, we lost internet in the entire studio. Actually, the entire city lost it. But we're back, and we're going to have a great show. Before we get to it, I just want to say this. I do this on a mission to help struggling addicts all over the country. Our goal is to, by December, to be able to stream this show into addicts' phones all over the country. Because I remember when I was a junkie on the street, and after I got high, or got normal, because after a while you don't get high anymore, you just get normal. And I felt like I was garbage, I was useless, I was a scumbag. And now everybody's on their phones. And if we can bring people like this next guest onto the show to show, hey man, if I can do it, you can do it. That's our intention for the show. The show is completely free. Doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you time to listen to these stories of hope and recovery. Now, the other thing that I want to say completely that I want people to understand is that I've found, since I left Hollywood, I have found that as I jump into this world of recovery and I try to unite people, what I find is that there's a lot of groups up there. There's a Facebook group out there with 190,000 people in it. So I send them the promo. I said, hey, I'm having this great guy, James, on. Can you put it out on your, it's free. All they got to do is watch on their phone, live stream, right? It's easy, right? No brainer. Well, how about your book? Do you check? No, I'm not. You don't have to buy my book. You don't do nothing. It's free. Well, let me think about it, right? Comes back to me about 3 or 4 days later and says, well, we have a marketing plan. I said, wait a minute, you want me to pay you something to show for a free show? And basically, it was like pulling nails. It was easier covering the war in Bosnia than it was trying to get it a post, and it didn't go on. It didn't go on because for some reason, everybody said, no, these are my people. No, these are my people. And this person got 50,000, and this person got, this guy here, this next guest, I sent him a Facebook message, and within hours, he said, let's do it, man. I sent this, so this guy is like one of us, man. He's gonna talk to us. He's not about people. He's not about, these are my people, these are your people. This is about recovery. And one of the big things that I want people to start doing that are out there in recovery, those people that are watching, that are fighting to help people recover, let's get it together, guys. Let's unite. You might have a difference of opinion, but the bottom line is we're into saving lives. That's our common ground. We're going to save lives. Whether you believe in the Suboxone, methadone, abstinence, Vivitrol, that's all cool, man. We don't have to fight about that. It's about saving lives. We're all in this same game. So without taking any more time, I want to get to this great guest we have, James Matthews. And James, let's start, man. Thanks for being on my show, my brother. And all right, my man.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your backstory, where you're from, how you got, hooked and all that stuff. Spend a few minutes telling me some of that.
Absolutely. First off, before I ever get into a share, I'd like to say that I'm grateful today, and I never ever want to lose sight of that gratitude ever, so it was an honor when you reached out to me and you said some really good things in your introduction. And one thing that stood out to me, is united we stand, divided I die, and I'm all about the coalition, and I agree with 100% of the things that you said. So I appreciate you. Philadelphia is made up a bunch of little boroughs, little outside pockets of Center City, Philadelphia, and I grew up in a little borough. The name of it's called Fallcroft. Those streets, a book was actually written about those streets. It was called Born to Be Wild, and I started off as just myself when I was younger. I had a couple other guys that we hung around, and next thing you know, there was a whole posse of us that held about 30 people. And we were inseparable growing up, but I do come from a dysfunctional family. That's not why I'm an addict and an alcoholic. I do not agree with the way that I was raised without going into detail. Some of the things that happened in my life, you only really ever read about in books or see on talk shows, and I held a lot of those things inside of me for a long time. And what would happen is I would terrorize the streets. I was a teenage runaway. The streets were more comfortable to me than my own home life. I remember back in '92, we had some vicious ice storms back in '92, and I was living in a white Cadillac in a garage, and the power windows were actually broken. They didn't go up, and I was more comfortable sleeping in that Cadillac than I was in my own home. It's constantly in and out of detention center. I was in the juvenile detention center system for quite some time. I was more comfortable being locked away in that room, that single cell room, than I was in my own home life. I felt comfortable in settings like that. Coming from a dysfunctional family, I never really had the relationship with my father. That played a major role in my life. And when he did come into my life, I remember when we were younger, we used to go to church. That's all I really remember when I was little. But at the time when he came into my life, he had tattoos, and I was playing it on the back of his Harley Davidson, and I was taking to swap meets, and I seen things in early adolescence that a kid shouldn't see at a swap meet. We all know what goes on in swap meets, and those things were attractive to me. Between being in the juvenile detention system and like where I come from, it's all inner city project kids. I'd be the only white kid on my cell block in detention center, and hearing about murder and hustling and stuff like that. At a time when I'm supposed to be getting my mind right, what I'm doing is I'm picking up little tools in detention center, and each time I'd be released, I had a new tool with me. And those things carried over.
So how old were you at that time? Set us the thing when you were
13,
picking up.
14. 13, 14. I was first had my freedom taken from me when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
That's way too young.
Man, yeah.
Way too young.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor and just move your head back a little, because I'm right at your eye. There you go. Perfect. I love it, man. So tell me about heroin now. How did that enter in?
Well, we used to go into the Badlands of Philadelphia. It'd be like a little carload of us, and a lot of those streets up there. None of my homeboys would get out of the car and go walk up the block and cop. That was my job. I was the only dum-dum that had the kahunas to do that. And, every time I'd walk off a block, I would hear the word nightmare, and
Oops, we lost James for a second, but we'll get him right back, man. This guy is a fantastic guest, and he proves to what he does for me is he shows here we got him, James, you're back. Sorry, this technology is something that when you're Skyping, where are you right now, James? You're in Florida?
No, I'm in Ohio.
You're in Ohio. So, James, where in Ohio are you?
Norwalk, Ohio.
Okay, so
right outside of Sandusky.
Oh yeah, and so Ohio's pretty bad, right? It's pretty. There's a lot of death in Ohio, right?
Per capita, yes.
Yeah,
per capita.
okay. So tell me, you were out in the streets and you're hustling, you're grabbing heroin, and it was called Nightmare.
Well, we were getting other substances off the block, and a gentleman used to call out the word nightmare, and I never knew what nightmare was. And I remember one day, just one gentleman took me up the block to get him another substance, and I had some extra money because, of course, I always upcharge people. And when I walked up to that guy that was yelling nightmare, and I found out what nightmare was. It was the stamp on the bag that I did for the very first time. 15 years old when I did my first bag of heroin. 15 years old.
15. And where did that bring you?
Man, well, I can tell you that I spent 3 years in the ninth grade. I was a ninth grade flunky. At the age of 17, I was dead on arrival. On the day of my 17th birthday, my mom wanted to take me out to get some, I was born in April. She wanted to take me out to get some spring clothes or summer clothes or whatever. And I chose to go up to the Badlands, and she would get a call later on that I was dead on arrival from a heroin overdose.
So what happened after that? Did you go into recovery or try a detox, or what did you do?
A huge part of my story, the courts didn't know what to do with me. I was a menace to society, wasn't even 18 yet, and I was already considered a menace to society. Probation officer didn't know what to do with me. The courts didn't know what to do with me. So there was a choice there. And it was either 18 months in a boys' home called Glen Mills, or it was a 15-week program in a Praxis boot camp. And, not everybody got into this boot camp, but, I had to do some testing and some physical fitness and stuff. And, I was accepted into this boot camp, so 15 weeks as opposed to 18 months, that's a huge difference, I excelled in that boot camp. Come to find out, when I apply myself, I'm a really smart person. I got, we had to go to school all day from 8 to 3, and then from 3 to chow again. We're doing physical fitness. We're learning how to march and fold flags, and it was intense. But I applied myself, and I got things like in each phase they were broken down in 5 weeks. There was 3 phases, and I got most motivated. By the time we graduated, I'm platoon leader and company commander. And when we graduated, I actually had 32 men march to the sound of my cadence, So I had new dreams and I had new goals. And when I came home, there were some people that had slept over our house. We were supposed to watch their car while they went on an airplane at the Philadelphia airport. And there was some money missing from the lady's pocketbook. And I was woken up one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And, I heard the rustling of a bag, which was my stepfather putting my clothes in a bag, and my mother's asking me where this money is. And I'm begging them, pleading with them, letting them know that I don't know what money you're talking about. And I wound up walking up the street with a trash bag full of clothes, not knowing where I was going. So all my new dreams, all my goals, wanting to go into the service, you know what I mean? Like, all that stuff disappeared. And I was homeless at the age of 17. Homeless.
So what'd you do?
Turned to the streets. I had a couple bonds in the bank that my grandfather put in the bank for me. I talked my mother into taking them out. They weren't fully mature yet. I wasn't even old enough to sign a lease on an apartment, and that apartment would turn into an absolute nightmare for me and the people that stayed there. It was like a crack shack. It was a trap house. What happened was like my father, who is a huge part of my story, he heard of some things that were going on in that apartment. He came to that apartment one day, and he said, "Son, you're coming with me." And I remember I detoxed for the first time. My sister had just moved out of his home to Virginia, so I go in her room with a day bed, and it looked like Pepto-Bismol threw up all over the walls. It was a pink bedroom, but that's where I detoxed. And he didn't go to work or anything. That was a really tough time in my life.
So how about jail? Man? Did you spend a lot of time in jail throughout? Or?
I've counted seasons and I've counted calendars being locked away. I have more time locked away than I even like to really remember. When I share at rallies or when I go into my story, I really don't get into it. But when I do talk about it on an intimate level, the prison that I used to go to, I actually had COs that used to make moves for me. I had correctional officers working with my sister on the outside. So I was that guy on the inside that, could really get anything you wanted. I had dope coming in. I had weed coming in. It was a smoke-free jail. I had packs of cigarettes coming in. I was still finding ways and means to get more when I was locked away, man. Actually, like when I would get released, I'd be released with a habit. That's how I get down.
How about gangs inside? Were you able to operate within them?
I never rolled with a gang. Where I live, I am the minority. And actually the one unit I was on, there was a bunch of pod workers and stuff. And I remember we all had a meeting up at the classroom where they used to have chapel and stuff. I was the only white person that was in this meeting. I rolled by myself. I always rolled by myself. I would front some of my stuff out to people, and I never ever had any problems getting that money back. I never had an issue, man. Ever.
So let's.
I think a lot of guys.
So let's talk now about there's a lot of people out there, right? We know a lot of people who have trouble getting it, And so for someone who came from your background, who came from Philly, a real tough place, saw stuff that's remarkable that no kid should ever see. How did you get it, man? What happened? Talk about that hope for recovery.
Well, I was first introduced to treatment, after that DOA on my 17th birthday. And my issue is through the years, I was a major player in the drug game. I had the club scene on lock in Philadelphia. So in my times of being court ordered, which was most of the time in the treatment, I don't really ever remember going to treatment on my own until 2010. I would hear people's stories. I'm in the meetings, I'm sitting in the back, I'm angry, and I would hear different things people were talking about. And I would say, I'm not like you people. I was convinced that I wasn't like these people. What happened over the years of doing that, 2005 up to right around 2010, that 5 years, I would find out that I was the real deal. At a time where I was at the highest of the highs in the underground scene, I actually went to live in the back of a Walmart, sleeping on pallets underneath of a tarp. I never got honest with people. I always heard these things over the years about, getting this thing they call a sponsor. And, I would always see those 12 steps up on the wall, and I'd see those traditions. And, I always thought that, like, you know what, I don't need those steps, but what I will do is I will hang out with people that are clean, because that's going to keep me clean. Like, I was convinced that this thing happened by osmosis. That didn't work out for me so well.
Right.
I wound up going to treatment 9 times. Altogether, I went to treatment 9 times. And, all those things I heard over the year from 17 to 37 years old, that's when I got clean and sober. I'm 39 years old now. And all those things make sense to me now, and I have something that I want to share because it's another huge part of my story. Years ago, I was emaciated in the back of a Nissan Pathfinder. Somebody was trying to get me into treatment, and I couldn't even get out of the back of this Nissan Pathfinder. I was completely sick and emaciated, man. I was dying. I was literally dying. And, a woman come out with her clipboard and stuff, and, I recognized her to a certain degree. I knew she was around some of the meetings that I was in. And, she said, James, she said, get out of that Pathfinder. She said, give me a hug. And I said, I can't get out. I said, I'm sick. She said, you better get out of there and give me a hug right now. And it took everything in me to get up out of this vehicle and to give this woman a hug. And when she wrapped her arms around my bony body, she whispered in my ear and she said, do yourself a favor and get honest. And it would take me years to understand what she was talking about. Years.
Wow. Yeah. So
it started with honesty, Rick.
Yeah, that's it, my man. So tell me, how you finally got it. When you finally, that day, I like to say, when you threw up your hands and surrendered.
Well, once I found out, well, there's two things. Once I completely got out of my way, my life started manifesting in ways I never thought was possible. But two, being as I've been around forever, so it seems anyway, in and out of the fellowship, whatever fellowship I was going to at the time. Once I found out that I never ever get this thing, is when I finally got a small taste of this thing. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah.
Because I had seen people that had been around. I knew a lady that had 36 years that went back out, another person with 22 years and 18 and a half years. And, like it's not, for me, it's not like I do the 12 step and it's like, all right, I'm done. Now what do I do? Or working with other people. I lived by a code of conduct for so long, and I'm institutionalized. And once I put some of those things to the side and I started extending my hand to people as opposed to like looking like I want to kill somebody, is where my life really started to unfold,
Yeah. So now the ride for recovery. Tell us about that.
Ride for recovery. I love the ride for recovery. There's a little story behind it. This March has just passed. We're almost coming up on another March now, so it's almost a year since my first ride. I got a call that one of my homies passed away, and this gentleman at one time had 7 years clean and sober, and he went back out and used, and it was his last time using. I was living in West Palm Beach, Florida at the time. That's where I got sober, and I flew home to his service. Now, I'd been to many services in my time, but I was asked to be a pallbearer in that service. And that did something to me. When I carried his casket, it literally did something to my insides. And no sooner did I fly back into West Palm Beach, my girlfriend had gotten a call that her lifelong friend passed away right here in this home where I'm at right now in this area in Ohio. She was found dead with a needle in her arm. When she flew here to Ohio for this service, I was asked to be a keynote speaker in my hometown, in my area. And, I used to ride a bicycle to the gym. From my house in West Palm Beach to the gym was about 5.5 miles. Nothing major. Florida's flat, smooth sailing. I got off the bike one morning, Rich, and something spoke to me. I don't know what it is. I still to this day. I try not to overanalyze or think about it too much, but I felt it on my insides when something said to me, son, you're not going to have those people fly you to that event to speak. What you're going to do is this bicycle that you're locking up right here to this post, you're going to ride this bicycle from West Palm Beach to Philadelphia. And you're going to raise some awareness here. And people are going to wonder what this old dope fiend is doing on this bicycle. And you're going to spread some hope along the way.
Wow.
And I did that. I came up with this idea, Rich. I went to a bicycle shop. I knew that my little Walmart bike wasn't cutting it. I went to a bicycle shop and I thought I was going to do this. I seen that it was 1,300 miles. It's going to take 13 days. I'm going to do 100 miles a day. That's what my brain told me. I went into the bicycle shop and this dude thought that I was delusional. He thought that I was high, and he Googled it actually. And he said, man, if you don't get on this bike like tomorrow, you're not going to make it to that event on April 29th. So I literally got the bicycle. I loaded up some tuna pouches and protein bars, and it took me every bit of 18 days to get there. And I got there on a Friday, and I had to be at the event the following day at 11 o'clock in the morning. So I literally just made it within hours, literally.
Wow. And
I had some tough times, man. Go ahead.
No, tell me about your tough times.
I mean, I both my bicycle rides, I don't do it with any music. You know what I mean? It's complete silence my entire ride. And some of those unincorporated areas where, you don't even see a house or a car driving by you. You know what I mean? Not even any gas stations to rehydrate, I know, like, when I like watching National Geographic and other weird shows like that, when people are out in solitude like that, the number one thing that breaks people down is the mental part. It's not so much the hunger or, like any other thing that might affect somebody when they're in solitude. It's the mental part why people tap out all the time, and it really pushed me to my limits that first ride. It definitely did.
So what happens? Tell me, can you explain what happens when there's nothing? Did you start hearing things?
No. My old sponsor, God bless him, he never fired me. I used to see this man. I had to live with him a couple of times because I was strung out, and I used to see this man in a recliner, and I didn't understand how you could just lay in a recliner for hours at a time with no radio or no TV and stuff. And what he was doing is he was just making a connection with his higher power. Now, I didn't understand those things years ago, especially when I was caught up in the grips. But what I can tell you is on that bicycle ride, I kept on tapping into things that I had no idea existed. And not just inside myself, but it was around me. Like, even being in areas that I was riding my bike through, like Georgia and the Carolinas and, all that, man, like I'm in unincorporated areas and I'm seeing nature and I'm seeing landscape that an inner city dirty thug doesn't get to see.
Right.
And it did something to me. Internally, it did something to me,
So when you got to the event and you went there, right? Talk about that. How many people were there and what did you tell them?
The last time I counted with somebody, they say there was right around 10,000 people at this event. And, the news crew was there. Everybody was wondering, like, who this guy is that's riding his bike from Florida to Philadelphia. And, what I can tell you is that I didn't really care too much about who was there. The one person that was there was my 18-year-old daughter who has been through the toughest of times with me. And the whole sea of people that were in that baseball field, the only person I really seen was my daughter that was sitting right in front of me. And she was so happy for me that day, man. That was a proud daughter, proud dad moment. I really rocked that mic that day. I had so many people coming up to me at that event. I had parents coming up to me that were crying that had lost a son or daughter. It was an emotional time, man. It was.
So.
And I gave that bicycle.
You go ahead. You gave that bike?
I wound up giving that bicycle away. They had raffles going on, and it was just spur of the moment type thing. I said somebody in this crowd needs a bicycle. And what they did was they drew a raffle ticket, being as all those people already had tickets. And, they called one ticket. And come to find out, the gentleman come up to me and whispered in my ear and said, somebody just bought me a car. You can give this ticket to someone that needs the bike. And that bicycle wound up going to a guy that was early in recovery. And that gentleman had never been given anything before in his life. And that was the first time he ever got anything, was that bicycle with 1,300 miles on it.
So
that was emotional.
Yeah, man, that's wild. I mean, the stuff that you're saying here. So you went from your second one. You went from to Nova Scotia and back. Tell me about that.
Right next to Nova Scotia. Unfortunately, I didn't have a passport, or I'd have kept on going. This ride right here, it was a little bit more thought out. I had some serious sponsorship on this one, and I started right here in Ohio. And I went right up to Main State Pier, and the ferry actually to just go right across the river to Nova Scotia was my waypoint. So for someone that doesn't have a passport, that was as far north as I could go. And what I did was I looped back down around and come up through Southern Ohio. So it was one big loop that I did. I had scholarships on this bicycle with me. I had full 30-day treatment scholarships. I gave every single one of them away on my bicycle ride. I did this bicycle ride again. It took 6 weeks with no music at all, and this experience was way greater than the first, man. I can't, when someone asks me about the ride, it's hard for me to put into words what I feel. And it's not just raising awareness. There's a whole nother side to it, because a huge part of my recovery I have a threefold disease. It's mind, body, and spirit. And these bicycle rides have really been working on my spirit.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I need that.
So
I
we
need
got
that.
so we have a question from a live guest. A viewer. For you, Lance Johnson, one piece of advice for newcomers. If you were to give one piece of advice for a newcomer.
I know Lance Johnson.
You do, all right. So that's
Yeah.
what he's asked.
My one piece of advice is the same piece of advice that was given to me years ago, and that is to find one person, because everybody knows one person at least, and get honest. Just get honest. You know, like we carry things around with us that we think we're going to take to the grave, or, you know, we're so worried about, there's three things that constantly consume me. What am I going to gain? What am I going to lose? And what do people think of me? And my whole entire life has been ran on those three things. You know, and as soon as I find some person like me, I had to find somebody. I had to tell that person that I'm uneducated. I spent 3 years in ninth grade before I flunked out. I got to tell somebody that I'm a deadbeat dad. I got to tell somebody that I don't know how to write out a checkbook. I got to tell somebody that I'm an under-the-table roofer that has never paid in the taxes. You know, I got to tell people that I'm not as tough as I look, that really inside, I'm crying inside. I refuse to tell those things to people, and I stayed sick the entire time.
Oh, that's great advice. So another question here from Baltimore. What would you tell someone homeless with no help, not knowing who or where to turn to for help?
That was me. That was me. I don't know. I know in Baltimore, because I ran those streets and rode my bicycle through those streets. If somebody is ready, right? If somebody has exhausted all their great ideas about how this thing works, right? And I know people see these treatment centers, and some of them are in South Florida, and some of them are in California, and they see these Malibu Passages commercials and stuff. And, you know, like when someone is ready and they have smashed all their good ideas about what's best for them, a person will walk. There's Salvation Armies everywhere, and most of them carry programs these days, right?
Yep.
Humble yourself. Go into a Salvation Army and take advantage of that 9 months that these places are offering to get people off these streets. There's always, I don't care if a person has insurance or not, or Medicaid or not. People can be completely indigent and still find a program if they're willing to sleep on a cot, sleep with people that actually smell like a barn animal, and eat baked beans every day. Because I know people that were completely done and they got sober through the Salvation Army program and live prominent lives today.
So the key thing that you said there that jumped out to me was humble yourself, right?
Humble yourself.
That's it. I mean, people.
Richie, I've tried to get people help, and I tell them where I can get them. And mind you, this person is about as indigent as someone can be. Doesn't even have a cigarette to smoke. When I tell them where I can place them, someone that was just living in a trap house and shooting puddle water, all of a sudden the treatment center are going to send them. They can't go there now. Okay, then you're not ready. You're not ready.
Yeah.
I play zero games with people.
Well, I always say, James, that when people surrender, when they throw up their arms to surrender, they'll go any place, man. You just tell me. I was, I was done. I was done. I couldn't. I was complete. I wasn't a tough guy anymore. All the tough guys I knew were dead, and so I was like, you have to humble yourself. You have to ask. Someone contacted me today, and they said, okay, and I called someone and connected, detox, boom, and it was like, wait a minute, I have to get some money on the streets, off the streets before I can, because if I go into detox, the money won't be there when I come back. So, and it's like, man.
They're not done.
Yeah,
they're not done.
That's exactly right.
That's called still having great ideas about what's best for me. As soon as I get rid of that stuff, and it took me 20 years to get rid of that stuff, because see, like I smash ideas, but then I go back to those ideas that I smashed and I re-smash them all over again. And my life is a nightmare. Finally, when I admitted complete defeat, that's when my life started to change.
So tell me about this next trip you got coming up in May.
This next bicycle trip. It's not just see, none of my bicycle trips are really about overdose awareness or the addiction epidemic. I'm not even going to say it's an opioid epidemic, Richie, because the problem is, and especially right now, is like these kids, and I call them kids because they're so much younger than me. They're being put on the Vivitrol, and next thing you know, they're shooting meth and smoking crack and doing everything else that they can do, but they're on Vivitrol and they're not doing opiates, so their life is great, right? Right now, we're suffering an addiction epidemic that's taking place right now. But my bicycle ride really isn't about that either. These are the success stories about, a once hopeless dope fiend that not only struggled with alcohol and drugs, but also struggled with a mental health disorder. This next bicycle ride, people need to know that we recover from these things, We recover. Not only am I bipolar, about as bipolar as they come, right? But I also suffered from PTSD, from way too much death and murder in my life, and today, right now, I'm recovered from them things, recovered. And my next bicycle ride to Redding, California, this is coast to coast recovery. I have some heavy hitters sponsor me on this one, and I will have scholarships again. For people that need them along the way. When I run into somebody and I need to get somewhere, bam, I got a scholarship for them. I feel that right now mental health is going unaddressed. I have a feeling, and I know from my experience because I work in the field, that it's going underdiagnosed and over-medicated. I know that for a fact,
right.
And that was me. They wanted to give me every pill under the sun, besides really sit down and find out what was wrong with me, and everybody has all these issues when they get into detox. Oh, I have anxiety, I'm depressed, and, I can't sleep. Well, you just got done shooting dope for 15 years. Why don't you stay sober for a year and then go get another diagnosis? You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I am so with you, man. One of the things I tell everybody is like what was told to me. It's like, hey, man, like, how long have you been in control of your life? And I could look, 33 years, so, well, how'd you do? How you doing? Well, not good, not well at all. Look where I'm at, right? And so this person said to me, which I use the same thing, why don't you try for 12 months? Give it up. Let someone else tell you what to do. Anything you think is right, don't do. Get a sponsor to let someone else tell you what to do for 12 months. Don't do anything that you're not told for 12 months. And then if you don't like what happened to you, you go back to the street. There's heroin back. It's not going away. And like people say, wow, did that guy just tell me I can go back? It really shocked me when he said it to me. And I use it because people, they have all kinds of, back in my day, I'm an old guy, so there was no Suboxone, there was methadone, but it was like, we had, in this detox, they gave you Libriums on how your vitals were, right? And so we'd do push-ups and all kind of trying to get when you'd go in line to take your vitals, trying to pump up to get more. But it was basically you were like nothing. And so when we get out and when it came, like, I can't live like this anymore, they all want to push medication to you. I got PTSD and this and that, and it's like, you're depressed, and it's like, wait a minute, guys. I just was doing that for 15 years. I don't want to do that. So how do you feel now when they talk about the opioid epidemic here in America and 70,000 people? How do you feel about how we're dealing with it with the current drug, the way we're combating with Suboxone, methadone, and Vivitrol?
Well, I am a part of my job, and it took me some time to get here. I do support medication-assisted treatment. it didn't work for me. When you give me Suboxone to take home, you tell me to take one strip, I'm taking two. You know what I mean? Send me to a methadone clinic, I'm trying to up my dose instead of calm down. You know, that's just the way my mind works. However, I do support people where they're at in their recovery. I meet them right where they're at.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, do I feel that it's designed for 3 years, 5 years, 15 years? Man, that's between that person and where they're at in their recovery. You know, there was a time long ago where, like, I just didn't agree with MAT. I just didn't. And I didn't agree with it because it didn't work for me.
Right.
What I do know now is that, like, I know that the anonymous programs are great, right? Yeah. But we are in 2018 and there's an IV crisis at hand, you know, and this MAT program is designed and it's designed for harm reduction. You know what I'm saying? People are actually getting their lives back on MAT, but what's happening, and this is for me too, because I grew up in the 12-stepper fellowship, and these people that are on MAT are being ostracized and pushed to the side, and that's causing more harm than anything. Yeah. You know,
I don't
know.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. Because for me it was abstinence, and when I look at my career and the things that I've done, I mean, I won the DuPont Columbia, which is the highest awarded journal, and I climbed those stairs in Harlem at Columbia. I climbed those famous stairs to get my and it was like, you know, worked on a movie for 5 years that I was in, and you know, I did all these things. And I don't think that if I was handcuffed to methadone, like some of my friends back still are, I don't think I would have been able to have the quality of life. So I was against it, James, but now I'm for it because I see it keeps me, when we talk about harm reduction, it keeps people alive, right? Keep people like us, it keeps them alive. However, I think we have to start talking. Like, I have a lawyer, his daughter's been on it for 5 years and she gets sick all the time, right? And so I think we have to start talking about some other things, because obviously if 70,000 people are dying, right, a year, we're not doing something right. So if we're not doing something right, whether it's in the football and or it's the generals leading guys into war, you have to, like, say, okay, we got to find some other ways, and maybe we start talking about abstinence, right?
Ricky, I'm going to tell you something. MAT, medication-assisted treatment. Yeah. More often than not, the A is being left out of MAT, and these kids aren't being assisted off of this. You understand what I'm saying? Just going to a Suboxone clinic once a month and getting your 30-day script and not doing anything, not seeking therapy. There's reasons why. Listen, normal people don't wake up and say, I think I'm going to put a needle in my neck, right? Like, there's things that are going unaddressed right now, and unless a person is assisted and starts getting some of that crap up out of them, they will continue to use and they will continue to be on MAT, because let's face it, I get an effect from MAT. I don't care. Besides Vivitrol, you put me on Suboxone and methadone, I get an effect from that. I'm not working on myself. The only thing I know is I made it through the day without shooting dope, and my life is great. No, there's still gut-wrenching issues that people are not dealing with. Right. There's underlying issues, bottom line. Yeah, and a lot of it is mental health is going unaddressed.
Yeah, and that is my thing. Like, I feel that the powers to be, you know, so Big Pharma helped create this epidemic, and I feel that they're making millions as the epidemic continues. And I think billions of dollars, right? So my thing is, like, if we're doing something wrong, then, I mean, wrong is a bad word. If we have a game plan, right? And we have a game plan so Mickey Ward is fighting Gotti, right? And it's the first fight, and Gotti's coming at him, just banging away, and Mickey is stepping back, taking it all, and he's getting killed. So when he goes to his corner after 8 rounds, and Dickie says to him, man, you better change your game plan and you start going the offense, go after him. Because he's getting killed, he's covered with blood. And then he takes off after him, And with one shot, he puts Gotti down, and his whole career changes forever. So in a metaphor, if we look at that, right, we're getting our asses kicked out there. We're kids, young, beautiful people, black, brown, white, mothers, airline pilots are dying. They're dying. So if the MAT is if that's the only thing we got for this harm reduction, I got it. We need to keep that to keep them alive. But we've got to look at other things. We've got to look at we've got to write a new playbook. And I think that go ahead.
Richie, we could do a whole nother show on this, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about the era that we're in right now in 2018 and how that's even changed from the 60s and 70s, okay? In 2018, we go from watching the Brady Bunch to watching the Kardashians on television. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The society we live in, a lot of these kids, especially like my daughter that's 18 and these kids that are born out of wedlock and stuff like that, these kids don't have dreams or goals anymore. There's no one to look up to. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The only thing people want to do is become America's Next top model, or they want to become a hip hop superstar. You know what I mean? And it almost seems like we're doomed. And these kids are picking up because sick people are sleeping with sick people, and then they're having these babies that are born straight into this disease. You understand what I'm telling you?
Yeah.
Especially from the 90s up until now, you have these people reproducing that met in the rooms or detox or treatment. Let's face it, we have 23 million people right now in recovery and 24 million people that are in active addiction, and they're all humping each other like rats.
Right. I mean, it's
a disaster.
Yeah. So what can we? I mean, so this ride you're going to take to California is going to be fantastic. So scholarship. How many scholarships will you have with you as you go?
I'm working on that right now because I still have some sponsors coming in. I have some treatment centers that I'm working with. My hope is that I have double of what I had on the last ride.
Nice.
I need to piggyback off of what I say. Richie, I don't know what you or I can do more. My mission is I would love to see the whole world change. I would love that. It's not going to happen in my time. It's probably not going to happen in your time. That's why I continue to just reach one person. You know what I mean? Because that's paid forward, and it'll that chain will never ever be broken. You know what I'm saying? I know that I've reached more in my day, but each day I always pray that God put somebody in my life that I can be of service to.
Right.
Just one.
But here's the thing. I agree with that, right? And that's pay it forward one at a time. I agree with that. But people like you, this kid from Philly, this thug, this very dangerous kid, we'll say, right? That it came out of that you never should have made it out. The odds were against you never making it out, right? Never making.
They didn't think I was going to live to be 25.
That's right.
No one.
Right. Absolutely. And so when you made it out, you're driving across the country on a bicycle, you can reach a lot more people than just one. You can do it one at a time. My point is, what can we do? People like us, people like, there's a kid out there, Joe Nestor. He's a musician. Good guy.
I know Joe Nestor. Best friends.
Yeah, so he's going to be on the show. Those are the type of people that we can get out there and we can, because we've seen the bottom of the barrel. We've been there. So what are some of the things that we can do to change this, to stop the mass killings?
Richie, I hit a roadblock on that because my perception and what I quote unquote think people should do is different than what other people think. I know that I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not a religious guru. But what I do is I continue. Prayer and meditation is a huge part of my recovery, and I send out a lot of prayers. My prayer chain is long. It's longer than my record is, and I just continue to pray, man. because in all actuality, everything that's going on, I'm completely powerless over these things. Once I start controlling these things and grabbing this thing and trying to put it over here and putting that thing over here, that's when everything just crumbles right before my eyes. There's a lot of things I got to turn over and say, I'm powerless, man. I don't mean to sound so cliche, but like that's just where I'm.
Yeah, I get it. But so let's talk about stigma. Let's talk about the stigma and what that really means. So take a few minutes and tell us about the stigma in Ohio or the stigma around the country.
Well, I came to here to Ohio first week of June. My girlfriend is from right here in Norwalk, Ohio, where I live. And my very first week here, I'm sitting down with a guy at a restaurant, and he was just released from the county jail, and he was living in a truck. And what's so normal to me isn't so normal around here. And I simply said, dude, why aren't you living in a recovery house or a sober house? And my girlfriend turned to look at me. The kid looked at me, and he said, we don't have that stuff around here. So me and my partner here, we have a peer support center here. That's where I'm at right now. We're about peer-to-peer recovery. We don't push programs down people's throats. But what it took to get this building, we had a wish list. We had the commissioners to talk to. We had the first responders to talk to. You know what I mean? We had the mayor to talk to. And, we had to meet with the Adams board or OMAS board, whatever you want to call it, and like this area that I'm in is only areas that I used to see on television. You don't even see one piece of trash on these streets. However, when you go into the emergency room, because we work with the girl that works in the emergency room with the data and all the numbers, their overdoses are more up this year than they were in the previous years. And once we pulled those numbers from the hospital and exposed them to the community, I live in a community where they're like, that's not happening in my town. Well, I have numbers to prove differently. Understand what I'm telling you? Yeah. Stigma, I moved right into stigma. And then, like, stigma with myself, I'm going around meeting with these people, and they see me with all the tattoos on my face and sleeved up and stuff, and they're like, look at this junkie. Well, little do they know, I have a little milestone in my life for recovery, and I've ridden a bicycle, through states that you've probably never even been to before. But immediately people look at me, and they probably still think I'm in active addiction. They call me a convict, I'm sure of it, and that's stigma there.
Right. Yeah,
but how about the gentleman walking down the street? Because I've served them before. The gentleman got the Armani suit on with the briefcase, but he's going to meet up with a dope boy. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. So from what I see out there, the biggest thing is, and on February 15th, I'm going to have a young lady, 24 years old, white, upper middle class town, outside of Boston. It's not going to happen there. That is got a little over a year, 15 months maybe, and so. It's not like when I was a junkie in the streets of Lowell, it was like we were bad guys. But it's not. Everybody knew we were bad guys. Everybody thought we wouldn't live. But today, it's not just thugs who grew up in Philly, right? It's the young, rich white kids. Everybody's dying.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
this thing is everywhere, Reggie. It's everywhere. I was away in South Florida with a guy in Alaska. Because I seen he had a motorcycle with Alaska tags on. He had it shipped down from Alaska. I said, what is exactly going on in Alaska that you have to be in treatment? And he said, you have no idea. He said, there's an epidemic taking place right now in Alaska. I mean, this is everywhere. Yeah. It's everywhere.
Right. How do you, so I got a question that just came in. Everyone knows it destroys life. So what makes somebody pick up a needle for the first time?
Well, I know I picked up a needle for my first time because I have a disease that tells me I just need more, bottom line. And I have a disease that tells me that, like, being as I've seen it on Pulp Fiction, that I want to get like that. You know what I mean? Like, those things are attractive to a guy like me. You know what I mean? It's like those tools I told you I was picking up from detention center. I got to go try those things myself. I have to.
Right.
No one showed me how to do those things.
Right.
That's
So
instinct to me. To a guy like me, that's instinct, Richie.
Yeah, I hear you. So I feel that what I see out there a lot is these young kids are getting hooked on the perk 30s first, and then they go from that straight to the needle, you see, but everybody's a little different, but when you get down to it, I didn't really have a great, my father, we could talk a lot about the father because I wrote a book about it, about my father, and, I've never met a guy that I've loved so much and I hate so much. It's almost the same, the amount of love I have for my father is almost the same amount of hate I had for him. And so a lot of times there's issues, family issues. I saw things crazy, not probably as crazy as yours, but there's a lot of different things that lead us to that needle. I played football, tore up my knee, and got some perks and some Dilaudid and all that stuff, and it led to the needle. So there's a lot of different things, but in the last 2 minutes we have here, I'd like you to just give us your thoughts and your future and what are some of your goals and your missions for the next year or two?
I mean, I was the kid that nobody believed in. I come into the process. My own daughter didn't want anything to do with me. I still have a 5.5-year-old daughter that is not in my life, and I haven't seen her since she was 6. Having this peer support center here, getting more certificates with my name on it, just like the MAT one I just did, and the peer supporter and recovery coach. I'm uneducated. I don't have a college degree, and my passion is to help people. I've always loved people my entire life. I just love people, period. But the fact that I can be of service to people, I don't need a college degree for that. We have a center here. It's absolutely beautiful. We've been having more and more people just walk through our doors and saying, hey, like, I need help. The next year or two of my life, this is my home here. I open up these doors here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that doesn't mean that someone's going to come walking through them doors at 7 a.m. Heck, the sun's not even up. But my duty is to make sure that someone is here when they do walk through these doors. I will continue to be here. We asked for this place. This place is going nowhere because the commissioners own it.
And so we got 17 seconds left, and we're signing off. Man, you're a great guest, man. I wish you so much luck on your ride. I'm going to stay in touch with you, man, and we're going to do this, brother.
In.
All right, my man. It was good. Thank you very much for sharing with us, man.
God bless you, Richie.
God bless you, my brother. Good luck to you on your trip.
Thank you, sir.
All right, my brother. You have a great one. Years ago, I shot 10 bags of heroin every day. Heroin is a beast, and that beast has infiltrated every town and city in America. In 2016, 64,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose of opioids. I hope that the stories we bring you on this show save lives in 2018. I'm Richie Farrell. I'm a heroin addict.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.